Hi, and welcome to SCW once again here on YouTube.com. Thank you for choosing the channel and choosing the video. Please subscribe right now. Leave in the comments in the comment section. Please like and share the video as well. It's time to get in those time machines once again for another retro review. This time on SCW will be SummerSlam 2013. Going to be discussing John Cena versus Daniel Bryan, CM Punk versus Brock Lesnar, and much, much more. And I've got a guest joining me straight after this. So without further ado, let's get my special guest in for today. The one, the only, it's from It's My House podcast. It's Chris. Chris, welcome to the show. How are you doing, my man?
Hello, buddy. Yeah, I'm really good. Thank you. Thank you for having me. We've been trying to sort this out for a while, haven't we?
We have, yeah. There's been numerous occasions we've tried to do these sort of things. I remember Money in the Bank at one point, and then that kind of WWE kind of shuffled up the calendar, which kind of threw those plans into complete disarray. But it's great that we can finally do a show together today. And of course, Chris, your channel as well, It's My House podcast, of course, is a very popular podcast that's been going interviewing many wrestlers for our wrestling community. Could you just tell people a little bit about your podcast? Should they know not about it?
Yeah, I mean, you've hit the nail on the head there, really. I pretty much exclusively interview people from within the industry, not always necessarily wrestlers. I've had ring announcers, I've had commentators, I've had referees, like to get lots of different perspectives, people from different promotions. Really keen to speak to women from the industry and independent wrestlers as well, to sort of like give a bit more of a shine on those guys. Had some really big guests, as I say, had lots of independent guests. I just love talking to people about wrestling, and it's one of my favorite things to do is to see how much of a wrestling fan these wrestlers are, and sometimes that really shines through. Vicky Guerrero was one. When I spoke to her, you could just feel how much she loved wrestling.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And like you say, Vicky Guerrero being one of those top guests that you've had on, but you've had the likes of Diamond Dallas Page, Eric Bischoff, Vince Russo was another popular episode as well. And like you say, we've had some others like Renee Michelle was there as well. I believe Mariah May as well was one of the early episodes you did. Been following for a long, long time on your channel, and some fantastic interviews indeed there. And I obviously not going to say have you got a favorite, that would be unfair on your guests, but do you have one or two that you turn around and say, that you're particularly proud of those episodes that you were able to give those ones out to the public?
Yeah. If I was to stop this tomorrow, I'll always be able to say I interviewed Vince Russo, and it was incredible. Like I went into that thinking, oh shit, I don't know what he's going to be like, because he's got this persona. We know what he's brought to wrestling throughout his career, and he says bro a lot. We know that he's a bit controversial, but he was just a nice guy to talk to, just really humble and really, I think people think he's very arrogant and very cocky and very brash, but he's really not. Some of the really early ones as well, though, like Grado. Grado was my very first guest interview. He was brilliant, so much fun. Mariah May, she was an absolute delight to talk to. It's hard, like you say, it's hard to pick a favorite, because I don't want that to sound like I didn't enjoy the others. I've enjoyed all of them. Al Snow was a really cool interview. He was so knowledgeable. I just sat there like wow, like the stuff that I learned from him. Until you talk to these guys, you don't really realize, like, shit, we don't know anything about wrestling. We think we do, but until you talk to someone like him, or Lance Storm, he was another one who just taught me so much about the business that I already thought that I knew. But I didn't really understand it. So but like I say, if I stopped tomorrow, Eric Bischoff and Vince Russo, I could die a happy man.
Well, I'll tell you what, there's definitely ones to tick off the bucket list. They're absolutely superb, and some great interviews. Well, like I say, I have actually put your channel in the description, so people can go and click directly on there to go and give you a subscribe and go and check out some of the amazing interviews that you've got. But of course, today you're kind of in the role reversal. You're actually going to be in the other side of the chair today as we go through a retro review for SummerSlam 2013. And of course, when your first thoughts of going back and to watch this pay-per-view again, what were your initial thoughts? Was you happy that we're going to be reviewing this show? And if so, what matches were you looking forward to the most?
Yeah, absolutely. SummerSlam's always been, it sort of like feels like it's my pay-per-view, because it always falls on my birthday weekend. I was lucky enough to go to SummerSlam 2018 in New York. That was incredible. For me, it was always like, I love WrestleMania. We all love WrestleMania, but for me, the order's always been SummerSlam, then WrestleMania, just because it holds something a bit more special for me. Some of my favorite matches of all time have happened at WrestleMania. TLC 2000, Shawn Michaels versus Triple H 2002. Some matches from SummerSlam 2013 that we're going to talk about tonight. It's just, it always delivers. I'm always happy to talk about it. And as soon as you told me that 2013 was the result of the poll, I was like, yes, let's go, let's get into it, because there's certain matches that really stick out in 2013.
I like it. Well, I tell you what, let's not waste any time and diving straight into it, shall then. Like we say, we've got plenty of matches and look forward to getting your thoughts and opinions as we go through. And of course, with any good show, and I'm just going to hold my notes up as well to make sure that I don't miss any of the details, of course, because there's lots of good details. And one thing that's funny about SummerSlam 2013, its date was actually on the 18th of August, which, if I'm not mistaken, is the same date today. So this show is 8 years old today at the time of recording, which is pretty fun. And as well, the location was in the Staples Center in Los Angeles, California. In attendance, we had 17,739. The buy rate for this pay-per-view, because this is pre-network days, believe it or not, I know, believe it or not, it was very close, but not there, was 296,900 was the buy rate in total. And just a couple of other small little nuggets for you, Chris, there. On the commentary team, we had Michael Cole, Jerry Lawler, and JBL. And for the ring announcer, we had one only, Justin Roberts, of course, now a part of AEW. So we will be talking about a number of superstars who currently actually are still in the business doing different things at different points. But we will start off with them, which was the kickoff match on that show, which of course was a heck of a match as well. One I didn't expect to be on the kickoff, the United States Championship with Dean Ambrose against Rob Van Dam. Now, of people that know, RVD is my favorite wrestler of all time, so I was quite keen on seeing this match. He'd not long returned to WWE. In fact, actually, he would actually make his return to WWE at the Money in the Bank pay-per-view the month before. So this was kind of fresh seeing him back in the card in WWE. Dean Ambrose had been the champion, the United States champion, since Extreme Rules. So it actually, his first title match he won the belt. And I think he had a long, lengthy reign as champion as well. But going into this, give a little bit of detail of the match before I get your thoughts on it, Chris. This match here, pretty much the story of it was every time that RVD was going to win the match with his 5-star frog splash, there would be distractions with the Shield, the other members, Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns. I mean, the first time RVD was going to go for it, the music would hit. But this was countered once Seth and Reigns got to ringside. We got Mark Henry and Big Show come to make the numbers even, if you want, which would take us to an ad break. We would come back from the ad break. And then, of course, the second time RVD would do it, I believe it was Seth Rollins that would try and climb up the apron to distract RVD, which led them back to just wrestling in the ring once again. But the last time RVD successfully hits that 5-star frog splash, it looks like we're going to get a brand new United States champion. At this point, Roman Reigns has had enough. He's straight into the ring, hits a spear onto RVD, giving the DQ finish, and RVD winning the show. And of course, at that point, the baby faces all coming in, chasing off the heels as they go out, escaping through the crowd, which that's what the Shield would do when they would enter matches and leave them back in 2013. So all in all, I thought this was a fun start, even though it was a kickoff. A lot of fans seemed quite invested in the Staples Center. This is awesome chance we were getting. What were your thoughts with this match, Chris?
Yeah, and the crowd were like crazy behind RVD. I have to agree on RVD. RVD is not my favorite of all time, but he is my second favorite behind Jeff Hardy. Nice. He's very, very close. Very, very close. Huge RVD fan. Surprisingly a good match, quite a lengthy match as well. Especially when you consider the fact that this SummerSlam was quite a small card. I think there was only 6 or 7 matches all in all on the actual main card, so you would have expected this to maybe be bumped up to the main show. But yeah, quite a competitive match. The thing that sticks out for me is obviously the Big Show is a very big man, hence the name, very heavy man. And when him and Mark Henry came in to make the save at the end, the way that the Big Show just sort of very slowly rolls into the ring to make the save, I'm just thinking, you ain't making the save. No, anybody is going to outrun you. And then Dean Ambrose literally just they cross each other as they go in and out of the ring together. And I think, well done, Show. Good save, mate. Good save. It was, as I say, yeah, it was a really good match. I'd be honest, didn't until I rewatched it, I didn't fully remember the build to this at all. It wasn't the build wasn't particularly memorable for me, but the match really surprised me. I think if I was to give this a rating, I'd probably go for 3 stars. I think it's one of my favorite pre-show matches. You know, pre-show matches are obviously filler, warm the crowd up, but there's no reason that this couldn't have been on the main card. It was better than probably half of the matches that were on the main show.
I'd have to agree with that. I think that's a really good solid point you make there, because you look at some of the matches on there, perhaps it got more time because it was on the kickoff. Maybe that was the idea. But I feel sometimes we get that with current WWE matches. I remember actually the last pay-per-view we watched, which was the Usos with the Mysterios, that was on the actual kickoff for that show. Felt like it was better suited because it was a longer match than what we got, say, with AJ Styles and almost against the Viking Raiders. And especially around this time, I mean, the Shield were quite a bit on the kickoffs with some of these pay-per-views. I remember around this time, Rollins and Reigns were actually in one. I believe it was Battleground against the Usos, and they had an epic match. It was probably match of the night, and that was on the kickoff. That's going to show how much at that point it was, you know, an impact you could make on the kickoff with those. And like you say here, this was probably better than half of the card here. And I have to agree with you. The crowd was really into it, giving it a 3-star. And of course, everyone loves to know what Dave has to say. Big Dave Meltzer about this. He's only given this a 2-star rating, which, Dave, I don't think you're generous enough, my friend. And that was a DQ finish, but I think you could have given a little bit more there. This was 13 minutes and 38 seconds. So like you say, a lengthy match for what is a 50-minute kickoff as well show. So this was given significant time. But I mean, from this onwards, I mean, RVD, I don't think, continued the chases. If anything, he went after Alberto Del Rio, if I'm not mistaken, for the World Heavyweight Championship, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, that's pretty much the kickoff. So we'll dive then into the main show then. And of course, one thing that definitely took me by surprise that I can remember, we need, of course, a host for all of these big events. And of course, the host of this one to make things must-see, make it awesome. Of course, we're talking Hollywood. We have to be talking about the A-lister. It must be The Miz. That's right. Don't tell Bonafide Heat that. But yes, The Miz is the host for SummerSlam. What were your thoughts initially when you saw The Miz was going to be the host role for this show?
I adore The Miz. Live and breathe The Miz. Not a big fan of how he's been used in modern day WWE for sort of like the last, well, since the whole Lashley Money in the Bank, all that sort of mess. Yeah, I love The Miz. I feel he was a natural fit to be a host, given the fact that he has now obviously gone on to be a host of multiple shows himself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I don't recall. I don't think we saw much of him throughout the night. I think hosts in WWE and on pay-per-views aren't used particularly well. Not compared to how they were many years ago, anyway. We don't sort of, the one that always springs to mind was Alexa Bliss. I think we saw Alexa 2 or 3 times at WrestleMania, and she wore a different outfit every time. The main thing that I remember of The Miz hosting SummerSlam was the whole all of the interruptions from Fandango and Summer Rae. Yeah, which then obviously led to The Miz beating down Fandango. Fandango was crazy over. Even just those brief interactions, really cool little. Did they have a program after that? Did they feud afterwards? I don't remember.
I imagine they must have done. Unfortunately, I don't at the top of my head remember if it had a pay-per-view ending with it, but certainly they must have had some sort of encounter because, like you said, the interactions all through the evening. Of course, it started with the start of the night there, like you say, Miz was trying to, in front of the crowd, say what matches we were looking forward to, and like you say, that we got the dancing from Fandango and Summer Rae. But Fandangoing was so popular. I know you're a big soccer fan, like I am, as we like to say. Football. We're English on this one, so we're going to say football. I remember it was big actually for Everton Football Club at half time. They were all Fandangoing. That was the thing that was going on at Goodison Park. So it did have its place and time, and sadly Fandango no longer with WWE right now, unfortunately, but hopefully we'll go on to greener pastures hopefully now that he's left the company. But we then go into the SummerSlam video package that we have, and it's full Hollywood style there, promoting the 2 big matches. Can we get Daniel Bryan there? Of course, not the traditional company guy to go and win the big one, fulfill that dream of becoming champion. And let's not forget as well the betrayal of Paul Heyman turning on CM Punk at Money in the Bank, and Punk saying he's not afraid of Heyman's monster. And one thing that's quite funny about this, because there's that sort of detail there, but I don't know if you noticed this, but the music that was used towards the end of this was Akira Tozawa's theme music coming to the ring. I found that quite fascinating watching that on the WWE Network. Did you notice that?
No idea.
No? Well, it's been a while. It's been
Yeah,
he's been in the 24/7 division that long. He's probably not used an actual ring entrance without a referee running down somewhere for a long time. But it actually is Tozawa's Cruiserweight Classic music that was used for it. So just a little bit of a weird nugget anyway, but I thought I would share it with you. But we'll go on to the first match of the evening anyway, and definitely an interesting first match because it was a Ring of Fire match, which of course is betterly known as an Inferno match. Let's not kid ourselves here, but a slightly different rule to back in the Attitude Era, of course, or even if the Ruthless Aggression, if people remember back to those matches then as well. Instead of being that you set the opponent on fire, this is still pinfall and submission. The idea of this match was to really keep the rest of the Wyatt family out, because if we remember the build to this, literally Bray Wyatt had just come to WWE with the Wyatt family. They were attacking Kane, and this was a way of keeping Harper and Rowan outside of the ring. And this was actually Bray Wyatt's debut as well, his debut match in WWE on a big platform like SummerSlam. So clearly you could tell early on that they had real high hopes for Bray Wyatt.
Yeah, absolutely. But honestly, I remember this at the time. I remember watching it back last week, and then I flicked through it again today when I got home from work. I don't like Inferno matches, and I think that's going to be a controversial thing because everybody, I think we associate it really closely with the Attitude Era, because obviously that was around the time that we first saw it, and it was done probably as best as it's ever been done back then. But it's a distraction for me. It's up there with the Red Hell in a Cell in terms of distractions for me. It takes me out of the match. This match in particular was really slow. I think Kane was obviously winding down into the twilight of his career until he would, just make sporadic appearances. It wasn't particularly good. I don't think this was particularly in terms of a wrestling match. Anyway, obviously it was a spectacle. It was great to see Bray, as you say, get that big immediate push against a legend, a future Hall of Famer like Kane, in a match that he pretty much identifies with. It's synonymous with him. Yeah, I was just glad to see Bray get that big moment. Like you say, it showed that they had a lot of faith in him from the word go. I'd loved what we'd seen of Bray and the Wyatts in NXT, but watching it back, man, it just made me sad. Obviously, we've lost Luke Harper, tragically. Bray, Eric Rowan, both gone from the company. Strowman, a few years later, gone from the company. The whole family just gone. It's such a waste.
It is, and to think what could have been. I mean, obviously, like you said, we're tragically losing Brody Lee, of course, and it still rings true of a lot of the wrestling fans today. And of course, we all dearly, dearly miss him. And like you say, Bray Wyatt, of course, arguably has been probably one of the most badly booked talents. When you see the potential of what could have been with Bray Wyatt, I think he's definitely one of probably mismanaged is the right word to use for this. Mismanaged talents in WWE history. And like you say, this match, I mean, it was good to get Bray off with a victory from the start, but like you say there, this was slow in places, a bit sluggish. And I think, like you say, the Inferno as a spectacle, it's impressive on the eye. It's nice to look at, but the problem is it really limits what the ring wrestlers can do in the ring, because they don't want to go too near the ropes either. You heard Bray actually scream quite early into the match. He clearly had walked too close to the fire, it felt, very early on, because so they don't even want to be in amongst the turnbuckles. It leaves everyone kind of stuck in the middle of the ring. So I found really the thing that really interests me with this is the element, of course, where we wanted to keep it one-on-one, and that's why I kind of got my enjoyment out of the match, because the Flames clearly as well to keep Rowan and Harper away. They tried to get in there multiple times to use a fire extinguisher to try and take the Inferno away, and it came straight back up. We see Harper burning a kendo stick, tried to be thrown into the ring, completely fouled by Harper as well. It didn't work out at all for them. In the end, they used a cloth to actually cover over and then use the steel steps where Harper and Rowan could get into the ring. They both take out Kane. It's almost like a sacrifice then given to Bray Wyatt, because Bray Wyatt, this has been an even match, but he was hit by 2 choke slams. Of course, you want to make it look like that Kane's going to look like he's going to get the victory. Perhaps maybe this was too soon with Wyatt. I don't know, but certainly the right result. Bray Wyatt was getting the victory. It was sacrificed with this Kane given to him, hitting the Sister Abigail, getting the 1, 2, 3. And of course, after the match had gone down as well, we see the Inferno, of course, go away. We see Bray Wyatt in his famous rocking chair. I mean, the entrance and everything about Bray, the music, the "We're Here," all of that just brings goosebumps seeing that back again. I miss the Each of Worlds character so much. But of course, we see Kane brought to a set of steel steps. And of course, Bray says to him, "You made your bed, now you must burn in it." Harper and Rowan take the other set of steps, one side each, and just slam it on Kane's head. And of course, then they actually take Kane away afterwards to end off as a visual there. Kind of an eerie start to SummerSlam, but definitely a lot of wow factors and spectacle. Would you agree?
Yeah, definitely got people got people invested and got people talking and excited for the rest of the show. It was, like you say, really big way to open. Everybody wants to main event the show, but I can't remember who it was that said it. If you're not main eventing, you want to be opening the show. Because that's the two things that people remember. And as much as I didn't enjoy this match, I'm pretty sure I'll always remember it. So they must have done something right.
Do you know what? Sometimes that's the most important thing, is remembering it. Like you say, then that's very interesting to see indeed. And this match, I mean, was given 7 minutes and 48 seconds. And if we come to our ratings for it, Mr. Dave Meltzer gave this a complete dud. He didn't give it anything out of 5 stars here. Chris, what would you give it?
That's a bit much. Again, Dave not being fair. And this is before AEW, so he had no reason to not be fair. Even being generous, I'd probably be looking at most 1.5. And most of that would be for the spectacle. Most of that would be for Bray getting that big moment. It wasn't particularly enjoyable, even as a big Bray fan.
Do you know what? I have to agree with that rating. So you may be being a bit generous, but I have to agree with it. I think 1.5 is good. The spectacle is there. There is elements of the story of the match that I did take some enjoyment out of. I just think the stipulation itself does limit to what the performers can do in the ring. So I think that's kind of a shame. It's actually the second time on these retro reviews that I've actually got to call a Kane and Bray Wyatt match, which goes to show that I enjoyed their Backlash 2016 match actually more than what I enjoyed here, which is kind of interesting when you look back at it. But we'll move on in the show then. And of course, we'll go to our next part then. And I did forget to mention at the very start of the show that JoJo did sing the national anthem, but of course, there's not probably too much to take away from that. But we did get a throwback to the kickoff backstage where Paul Heyman was announcing that CM Punk versus Brock Lesnar was no longer a regular singles match. It would be a no disqualification stipulation. Without giving too much away at this point, for me, I kind of felt that this did add to the match and added more excitement. Did you feel the same, Chris?
Yeah, because as much as I was a CM Punk fan, I think we went into that thinking it was already a foregone conclusion, didn't we? That Brock was just going to come out, ruin him, maybe a squash, maybe a quick match, I don't know. But that element of no holds barred, anything goes, you start to think, maybe Punk's got a chance. And then that just got me more excited, just got me more invested.
Absolutely, indeed there. But we go on to the second match in the meantime. And, of course, that's two former tag team partners from the Rhodes Scholars, of course. It's Cody Rhodes against Damien Sandow. Of course, Sandow is the Money in the Bank holder. Of course, technically, you could say he screwed Cody at Money in the Bank, but they were both in the match. So, I mean, technically, it was fine that Damien Sandow won that match. But as we say, tag team no more. We even found a situation where Cody threw the Money in the Bank briefcase in the Gulf of Mexico. I only found that via commentary. Thank you, Jerry Lawler. This was the reason why Damien Sandow had his very own, version of the Money in the Bank briefcase, which actually really fit his character rather well. I quite like the design of the briefcase. Did you?
Yeah, the whole like leather bound book sort of feel to fit in with the intellectual thing that he was doing. Yeah, loved it. I loved Sandow. Loved everything that he went on to do, but obviously the future for him after this match was not particularly bright, not particularly well handled, but I'm sure we'll come to that.
We can do after the match if you want, because like you said, this is probably the starting point for the turnaround for Damien Sandow. I mean, he's come out here at SummerSlam, big show, on his way to the ring, and like you say, he's on the mic there saying that each team has a leader and a sidekick. Of course, he was the leader of the Rhodes Scholars. He's making that point coming down here. But I mean, we go into the match. It's a fun little back and forth match. The match isn't probably the longest one on the card. It's only 6 minutes and 39 seconds. In fact, there's only one match that's shorter on the card, put it that way. But it's a short back and forth match. A couple of nice little notes I'd like to mention. Damien Sandow using a variation of the execution submission hold in the match. Quite like that. I saw Cody Rhodes using the Samoa Joe version of the Muscle Buster in the match as well. That looked quite devastating when it was applied. And we saw a good, beautiful disaster kick as well to a great near fall. But as we get to the finish, Cody Rhodes goes for a reverse roll-up using the ring ropes, and Damien Sandow holds onto those ropes. But he's feeling a little bit tired at this point. Cody just grabs him, hits the crossroads for the victory. Like you say here, this is great for Cody picking up the victory, but this is the start of the downfall for Sandow, because he's won the Money in the Bank. He's lost here on a Big Four pay-per-view where he could look like he could be actually the dominant one of that tag team, go on and cash in that Money in the Bank later in the year. Of course, he tries to do that on John Cena without any preparation, anything like that. The only person that had not successfully cashed in before was Cena, who had actually announced it ahead of time. And of course, here Sandow didn't do it ahead of time, but still lost in a 15-minute match, even though Cena was actually very vulnerable going into it. It didn't work out for Sandow in the end, did it?
No, and it's a shame because he was over like Rover, man. Whether you loved him or hate him, he got a reaction, and he was over in the most literal sense of the word. Supremely talented, so charismatic, funny, but he could also do the serious stuff. He could be a really detestable heel. I don't. They really dropped the ball on Sandow. Obviously, he went on to still be not successful, but still well loved. Obviously, everything that he did with the Miz, with Mizdow, was, honest to God, just my favorite thing ever at that time. Nothing else that was going on was better than Mizdow. Yeah, I'm not a fan of people not successfully cashing in the Money in the Bank. I think it should be used. I think it should always be used when it's needed to be used. Like, what was the point of putting it on him? Somebody's so over. You've just wasted a marquee match for Money in the Bank itself. I don't think him losing really did anything for the story. It was just sort of like, oh, he's lost. Okay, moving on. You know, it didn't. I don't know what the point of it was. Very, very much like what they did with Otis last year. Like, what was the point of that? Just to take it off him and do other things with it. Just sort of felt like it was reactionary to how popular Sandow was, and then they just didn't really know what to do with him from there on. It's yeah, real shame.
It really is. Really is. And yeah, I mean, obviously, Cody getting a taste of a victory on pay-per-view, kind of almost like that what we see a lot when it comes to AEW days, but we'll less said about that, the better. We'll say though quickly, I said this was only a short match, and Dave Meltzer's given this a 2-star rating. Overall, before you give your rating, did you enjoy the match?
Yeah, I did. Like you said, it was a pretty much a sprint, wasn't it? It was very short. It didn't feel short. It didn't feel long. It just felt competitive. Wasn't really sure who was going to win. I assumed Sandow would win because, like you said, he had the Money in the Bank. Why not build him as a legitimate threat to actually cash that Money in the Bank in? It was the start, like you said, it was the start of the decline for Sandow. As soon as he lost that match, I just thought, is he going to successfully cash this in? I don't know. I started to have doubts. But it was an enjoyable match. Sometimes I like a shorter match, especially as further on in the card we had quite lengthy matches as well. So yeah, it was enjoyable. I would have given it probably, I think, 2 stars, 2.5 stars, maybe would be appropriate. It wasn't by any means a classic.
No, exactly. If you blink, you can miss it. But at the same time, like you say, the what you're given is quality, and it's better to have a short quality match than have a long duds, which is what it could turn out to be if they're giving these guys too much time. So no, I have to agree with that. I think a 2 to 2.5. Let's go 2.25 for me. I'll go smack bang in the middle for it to give that as a rating. But overall, I think that this did, I suppose, what it needed to do for Cody. It didn't do what it needed to do, sadly, for Damien or Damien Sandow at that point. Mizdow later on. I get a little bit carried away myself already there in his career. But I'll tell you what, we'll go on to the next match then, which is one of my favourite matches of the card here, probably a sleeper match if going into it, was actually the World Heavyweight Championship match of Alberto Del Rio taking on Christian. Now, what I really liked about this was we got a video package. I'd forgotten this information, but Christian had actually been out of action for about a year. He had shoulder issues and stuff like that. So we had a video package of Christian's career, going through all those sort of great moments where he was a part of the tag team with Veteran Christian, winning his first World Heavyweight title, stuff like that, which was really, really cool to see. And of course, him wanting one more match. We got from commentary saying he won a triple threat match on SmackDown to get this opportunity to face Alberto at the pay-per-view. So this was pretty cool. And to go into a bit of detail of the match, if you don't mind me doing so, Chris, Alberto Del Rio wanted his entrance in Spanish. If you're asking me, I think Lillian Garcia was just showing off. That's just my opinion. I'm sticking to it. But we got quite an aggressive start and streak from Alberto Del Rio, kicking straight away Christian to the head while he was perched on the top rope. It was a very impressive looking spot kick as well. Del Rio focusing on Christian's shoulder, which makes total sense to the narrative story of the match. Christian, though, is getting back into it for some nice near falls, including a hurricanrana from the top rope. That was quite a cool looking visual as well. Alberto Del Rio would counter his spear, though, with a drop kick. Many good clean strikes throughout the match. He even used the same kick that he did to win the title from Dolph Ziggler earlier in the year. This was another near fall finish. We get to the closing parts of the match, though, and Christian hits a spear, of course, as he was doing at the time, but of course he could feel it in his shoulder and his arm was hurting so much. Del Rio then brings us into the cross arm breaker, and then after a couple of attempts of trying to get out of it, Christian has to submit and give up. So Alberto Del Rio does remain your world heavyweight champion. And this match was 12 minutes and 27 seconds. Honestly, it felt like 5 minutes. It was so much fun to watch. Fast paced. It was, you know, every move was hit so precisely. I really enjoyed this match. What about yourself, Chris? Were you feeling the same as me?
Yeah. Didn't have any expectations going into it, particularly rewatching it last week. Didn't particularly remember it, but I was pleasantly surprised. I always quite liked Alberto Del Rio, to be honest. I always get behind a couple of heels, and I really liked Del Rio. Christian was always my favourite of Edge and Christian. I don't know why everybody was always so obsessed with Edge. I think maybe it's because he was taller and he had a bit more of a look, but Christian was always the better wrestler for me. Edge had the charisma and the mic skills, but I loved Christian. What I really appreciated about this match was I love a good bit of ring psychology. I love a bit of, you know, storytelling within the ring, and you've got that with Del Rio working the shoulder so much so that he gets to the point where he wins the match by focusing on the shoulder and going for the submission. How long did you say this was? About 11, 12 minutes, did you say it was?
Just about 12 and a half minutes, exactly.
12 and a half minutes. Yeah, it didn't feel like it at all. Felt like it was sort of like you say, like a 5-10 minute match, because when I was just engrossed in it, and the time just flies by. I don't really have anything else to add to it. I think you hit the nail on the head. Lots of clean strikes, lots of really impressive spots from two guys that you don't really expect those spots from, unless Christian is in a ladder match or a TLC match or whatever. The kind of stuff we're used to seeing him in many years ago. But even at that age, even at that sort of twilight of his WWE run, obviously he's now wrestling in AEW/Impact. But even at that point, when he was winding down and maybe not putting on classics anymore, that was still an incredibly impressive performance. I think the right winner. I don't think Christian needed to win, as much as I always wanted him to get a bit more of a run and get more of a world championship reign. I don't think he needed to win the title at that point. I think putting over Del Rio as that evil heel was the right call.
I have to agree it was the right call for Del Rio, because Del Rio, I mean, obviously after the match they're going with his hero to the Latinos, being a real sort of cocky, as Del Rio can be. Like I say, you want to get behind a good heel, and around that sort of time, Del Rio he fit that heel role so well, didn't he? Had a slight turn to babyface, I think, back in 2012, but that didn't connect. Once we got this Del Rio back, there felt much more connections to that character, and just something about him. He doesn't look likable. When you see that smile on his face, is something you just feel like, I want to see you lose, and that's what it's perfect for wrestling, because he can play that character so well. There's something missing though for me, and I have to think it's one of the people I believe you've interviewed, if I'm not mistaken. Where was Ricardo Rodriguez? I miss that guy.
Yeah. Ricardo. Ricardo really helped to sort of. Would Del Rio have got as over without Ricardo? I don't think so. I can't remember what Ricardo was doing at that point, but he came back shortly after, didn't he, to be a part of the RVD feud, because he obviously very briefly managed RVD. Where was he? I loved his entrances. They were brilliant. I vaguely remember that face turn. I'm always keen to see a good heel and see what they can do as a face. But like you say, he's got one of those faces. You just want to slap it. You just want to slap it so hard. He's cocky, he's brash, he's slimy, sleazy, greasy. And I think what helps with someone like Del Rio is we know how much of a scumbag he is outside of wrestling. He's done a lot of bad stuff. He's been horrible to a lot of people. So I think even if he was to come back in this day and age now, sure, people would kick off a fuss, because obviously the IWC has more of a voice than it did back in 2013. If he came back now, there'd be so many protests, so many critics. But if you watched him on TV, you'd get invested. You'd get invested in hating him. Very much like Eva Marie. You know, as soon as she came back just a couple of months ago, however long ago it was, instant heat, and that's why they brought her back, because they knew they'd get that. And Del Rio is one of those guys.
Indeed. And it's funny enough you mentioned Eva Marie as well, because she's going to be someone we're going to be talking about on this stream. I didn't realize she was in WWE in 2013, but she's going to be there in a couple of seconds. But just before we do, we should give a star rating for this match. I almost forgot it myself, because Big Dave has given this a 3.5 star, which I think is a good rating. I think actually it's actually a fair rating. I'm going to stick with it.
Yeah, spot on. Yeah.
I think it has to be spot on.
Like we said before, not a classic, but just a very, very good, enjoyable match. I think to give it any higher would be just because we want to go against Dave more than anything. I think 3.5 stars pretty accurate.
I think it's pretty accurate as well. They're going to have to go with that one. But as I mentioned, Eva Marie, part of WWE in 2013. Who would have thought it? Of course, we go to SummerSlam Access. We will see Maria Menounos, of course. I think it was one of her early appearances for the company, where she'd been featured quite a bit there. She actually pinned, was involved in a pinning combination there with Natalya, pinning Brie Bella and Eva Marie on this show. Maria is then interviewed by The Miz, which will get another one of those interruptions by Fandango and Summer Rae. Miz and Maria actually dance outwards, so we can go straight away from that. And that leads us then to our fourth match. And we say here, we've got Natalya, who's actually joined to ringside by the Fungadactyls, which was, of course, Naomi and Cameron, against Brie, who was actually then paired ringside with Nikki Bella and Eva Marie. A lot of focus on Total Divas throughout this, and sadly, something that I know you were quite heavy in talking about, because a lot of people didn't seem invested in this match, Chris, did they? I know you were actually quite public about that on Twitter.
That's saying something. That's a real understatement to say people weren't invested. I wasn't looking forward to talking about this one, to be honest. When I forgot that it was on the card, when I saw that it was on the card, I just sighed, because obviously the women's wrestling that we have these days is obviously far, 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 far apart, polar opposites of what we had back in 2013, which isn't even that long ago, only 7 or 8 years ago. Obviously, at the time, we didn't have the 4 horsewomen, we didn't have the women's revolution, we didn't have Ronda Rousey, all these women to really step it up another level, Paige or any of them. The crowd just shit all over this match. You had to feel, no matter how you feel about women's wrestling at the time or felt about the women in the ring, like I don't like Natalya, can't stand Brie Bella in terms of wrestling. You had to feel bad for them. To hear chants throughout the match for JBL, for Michael Cole, for Jerry Lawler, there was even a chant for Zack Ryder. You know, if people are chanting for Zack Ryder, there's something wrong, because nobody chants for Zack Ryder, even in Zack Ryder matches. It's just as you say, when I watched it back last Friday, I tweeted out shortly after, just saying it's crazy to see how far the women have come. It's amazing. It's brilliant to see. It's a shame it wasn't always like that. Obviously, in the 90s and the Attitude Era, things were bad. They started to get better with Trish and Lita, and then they just fell off for about another, probably about 15 years, until the last 4 or 5 years when it really turned around. I have absolutely nothing good to say about this match. So bad. I've never, ever had the desire to watch Brie Bella in a wrestling ring. People talk a lot of crap about the Bellas, but I will give Nikki her dues. I think she's very, very similar to Trish in the fact that she started off, wasn't particularly good, took a couple of years to really improve herself, and I will always give her respect for improving herself. I think a lot of that comes down to working with John Cena and their relationship, and he obviously spent time with her, helping her, and she's credited him for that. But like, Brie Bella was married to one of the greatest wrestlers to ever do it, Daniel Bryan, and she never got better. I don't understand. Natalya, often credited with being one of the best women wrestlers of all time, and training various women, even Ronda Rousey. I never saw it. Never been a Natalya fan. I think she's slow and sloppy, and she doesn't know how to sell. I remember one time she was selling a leg injury by holding the wrong leg.
Ow.
Like, someone had been focusing on her left leg, and then she started holding her right leg, and I get exasperated talking about this period of women's wrestling. It was bad. It was bad. It was bad. Half a star is
Half a
generous.
star. Well, I tell you what, it's actually Dave's been more generous than you have. I think he's given it. I'm going to actually just redouble check this over that I've got this information correctly. He's actually given this match a 1.25 star. He's given this. I know. I think so as well. I mean, this match, it doesn't go on for very long. You'd be not surprised if this is the shortest match on the card here at 6 minutes. 5 minutes and 16 seconds there. Very easy for me to say. I think the nicest thing to put about this is that we see that it looks like Nikki and Eva are going to get involved here, and it's not in the most convincing fashion either. The Funkadactyls take them out on the outside. On the inside of the ring, we see an Alabama slam from Natalya to then put the sharpshooter in to get the submission victory. And it's short and sweet. And I mean, I must admit, I'm more of a Natalya fan than perhaps than what you suggested. But of course, not too good to hear that he's selling the wrong leg. That's never a good thing. But I wouldn't say Natalya's one of my favorites, but certainly she's not one that I am majorly disliking either. I think she can be of use of putting talent over, particularly rookies. I think that definitely her role in 2021. I think that should be what she should be doing. But that's just my personal opinion on that. But with Brie Bella and that, obviously, it's this wasn't the strongest match, and unfortunately, I mean, I'm gonna have to go with you like half a star. This was not good viewing, unfortunately.
Yeah, it just slowed the pace down as well. We had an all right start to the show. 2 really good matches after. The match before this was one of the matches of the night, and then you're higher, and then just back down, just like, oh, okay, cool. Just took me out of the pay-per-view a little bit.
Yeah, it was almost like a little bit of a break before we get one of our next big matches. But just before we get to that, I mean, Ryback was actually bullying the catering crew backstage. And I mean, why don't we see that more often in catering? Maybe that'd be the place to watch the catering crew in 2021 if we saw more of that action going on. But no, it's a god-awful segment. If you ever do go to it on the network, probably best to skim over it. And I think that's what we're going to do now and go straight to what was match 5 on the card. And probably, I imagine, one of the matches you're most looking forward to talking about. Of course, we're talking about CM Punk versus Brock Lesnar with Paul Heyman in the corner. Before we go into detail of the match, Chris, would you mind if I share with everyone a bit of the backstory?
Of course, mate. Go ahead, yeah.
Well, it's actually been packaged as the best versus the Beast. And we see what I really enjoyed in this video package of Paul Heyman expressing how it's obvious that CM Punk was the guy. He had what was the tools in him to be a champion. CM Punk saying that Heyman saw me as the guy I am. I owe my career to Paul Heyman. I love that little personal touch at the start of that actual particular intro video. Once we get into it then, Money in the Bank from 2013. CM Punk goes to get the briefcase. Paul Heyman uses a ladder to cost him the match. The first one, throwing it in the direction while he's on the ladder, not seeing what's going on. Then the second one, while he's just standing against the ladder straight into his face. CM Punk doesn't obviously win Money in the Bank that year. We'll let you know who does, if you don't remember, at the end of the video. Of course, then Paul Heyman says, I betrayed you because without me, you're not the best. And once he says it's clobbering time, this is the signal for Brock Lesnar to return and destroy CM Punk. CM Punk says he's not afraid, and he throws out the challenge for Brock Lesnar at SummerSlam. He says he'll also get his hands on Paul Heyman to make him pay. And we see also a video of Punk attacking Brock Lesnar with one of the cameras. So all in all, I thought that this was a very well together put video package. What did you feel of the video package?
Yeah, great hype. Nobody does them like WWE, do they? Let's be honest. Even in their darkest of times, when the product isn't great, those video packages are still amazing. Even for stories that like recently, Samoa Joe, Karrion Kross, complete decisions they've made have completely taken me out of that story. And then they drop one great video package on NXT the other night, and I'm right back in. The build to this was perfect. I very rarely use the word perfect in terms of wrestling, because what is perfect to me is not perfect to somebody else. But I can't imagine many people watched this build and watched that promo package without thinking, can't wait for this match. It was brilliant. It was a great story, a really simple story. Guy working with another guy gets betrayed. He's pissed off. The guy who betrays him brings in somebody else. It's very, very Paul Heyman. CM Punk works perfectly as that guy. So he works really well as an underdog. We've seen loads of underdogs over the years, like Ray and Daniel Bryan, but I think what I liked about Punk in that role is we'd seen him on top already. I think like with people like Ray was an underdog on the way to getting the title, whereas we'd seen Punk have the success already. We knew he could be the top guy, but he still felt like the underdog because, like, oh shit, it's Brock Lesnar.
Yeah,
you know. During that whole thing, I just thought, as great as this package is, he hasn't got a chance in hell of winning the match, and then was pleasantly surprised by how great the match was.
Absolutely. And like you say, it's the way it's been put together, the way it's felt legitimate. And I'd say that going into the match as well, this match felt legitimate. You saw some of the hard-hitting blows from the early point in the match. You went, that looked like it hurt. That looked painful. I mean, Brock Lesnar takes it straight to Punk at the early going of the match there, throwing him around the ring, inside and out, the sort of overhead suplex on the floor, on the bare concrete floor where the padding is, and then throwing him over the announce table. You see the cut on Punk's back early doors. That looks really painful to see. The match, like I say, it's quite a lengthy match here, but I'll give you some of the interesting, dirty details from this encounter, some of the stuff that you would want to go back and look over. CM Punk, obviously, had been taken out for quite a while, but does get himself back in, does the Randy Savage elbow from the top rope, which gets our classic Randy Savage chance during that time period. He attempts the GTS to go to sleep, but it is actually countered into an F5. That gets countered again to another roundhouse kick. Brock Lesnar tries the Kimura lock, which then Punk then counters that into an arm submission himself, then puts it into the triangle. We see Brock breaking that as well, then using a power bomb. Steel chair is brought into this match at that point. Of course, it's originally used by CM Punk, even though Brock Lesnar is the one to get it. We see then Punk actually going to use the top rope elbow once again with a steel chair, leads to a near fall. Punk then continues to use the chair on Brock, and Paul Heyman then gets onto the apron to grab the chair, which leads to CM Punk then turning his attention to Paul Heyman. Brock Lesnar gets Punk in the F5 position, but of course Punk has got hold of Heyman's tie at the same point. Eventually, though, when he actually gets loose, this gives CM Punk the momentum to be let off of the F5 to then Brock Lesnar to go straight into the go to sleep. At this point, we think we're going to get the 3 count, but of course, Paul Heyman makes the save. He's using those weak hits he can on CM Punk to stop him. Punk at this point then hits Heyman with the right hand. This is the best I can give at this point. It's almost like a fist pump, really. You could put some disco music over the top of it.
They're only worser when worser? That's not even a word. The only person who does a worse punch than Paul Heyman is Shane McMahon.
Yes, literally. I mean, Shannon Man's got... He can throw the fists of fire, can't he? But none of them look like they're ever going to land, do they? But Paul Heyman, once he's on the ground, he's put into the Anaconda Vice. It's looking like there's no way out for him. He's tapping out profusely. And Brock Lesnar hits CM Punk with an almighty steel chair shot. It looks brutal. It looks like it hurts. Let's put it that way. A number of chair shots later, and then an F5 on the chair. And mercifully, after 25 minutes, this match is finished. Now, let's be fair. This was a masterclass. It felt from start to finish. The fans were invested. A lot of near-fall spots. Like I said, a lot of it felt legitimate. Punk finding a way to come back. And like you said, that baby face there almost that felt like, because he's been there before, you believed he could come back. There's some really shining moments in this match. Chris, what stood out for you?
All of it. To put it simply, all of it. It's... I believe it was my match of the year, an instant classic. I'm never usually the biggest fan of a no DQ or a street fight or no holds barred, whatever. I think sometimes they're just a bit cheap. It's just like a stipulation for the sake of having a stipulation. But this one felt personal enough that it fit really well. I'm going to say something else that's fairly controversial that never goes down well. I love Brock Lesnar, and I think he is the most not underrated, but underappreciated WWE superstar of all time. What he does for his opponents, what he does, especially for his smaller opponents, is second to none. The way that he's, you don't look at Brock Lesnar and you don't listen to people talk about Brock Lesnar and then think that he's going to sell for anybody. But when he has to sell, boy, does he know how to sell. Like, he sold all match for all of Punk's attack. He's done it in the years gone by since, for AJ, for Finn, for Ray, for all of these guys. When I see Brock's going to face a smaller guy, man, I'm excited. I know it's going to be match of the night. This was, as you say, 25 minutes, and yet another match on this card that didn't feel like 25 minutes. I could have watched this for an extra 25 minutes and still loved it. It was just brilliant. A lot of people, especially in this day and age, don't like near falls or lots and lots of excessive near falls. But I think in this match, they were done really well. There weren't too many of them. There were a scattering of them, a fair amount, but they weren't overdone. And each one of them, you genuinely felt like that was it, that Punk had won it, like it was like he was going to defeat the Beast. But I can't speak highly enough of this match. I really can't. Loved it from start to finish. Story was perfect. Heyman's involvement in the match itself was perfect. Seeing him putting the Anaconda Vice was brilliant. Getting his comeuppance, everything that he deserved.
Yeah.
And like you say, like the one thing, the literal one thing of everything in this match that sticks out for me is that chair shot. I felt that chair shot.
I know.
Brutal.
Yeah.
Brutal.
Yeah. Absolutely brutal. Yeah, it was a really, really painful. And I have to say, I agree with all of your points about Brock Lesnar. As controversial as it may sound, I think you are bang on the money, because Brock Lesnar is a timeless performer. There is not many out there, if any, like Brock Lesnar. He's got the size, he's got the look, he's got the agility, which other big guys shouldn't have. He knows how to put over guys, which, you know, like you say, the CM Punks, the Finn Balor's, to make those near falls, to make those moments in those matches. If you're not a Brock Lesnar fan that's watching this, go back and watch this match, because it's not just CM Punk that makes this match, it's Brock Lesnar as well. And the thing is, we talk about Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman is a guy about timing. I don't remember where I saw this recently, but Paul Heyman is literally someone where it's like you see something and you think to yourself, you just know the right moment, or you do something, think that needed 2 more seconds before I did that. Paul Heyman is a master of knowing the pinpoint of the exact point he should do something. And he gets involved in this match at the exact right points of when you need him to get involved in this story, not just to protect Brock, but to protect everything that's going on, to keep the story layers going, and not just keep it going, but build it another level. And it gets to that point that the Staples Center is just eating every near fall up, every detail that happens. They're going crazy when Paul Heyman's in that Anaconda of Ice. The gasp, like you said, from that chair shot and how that match finishes. And there's just respect all over, where CM Punk gets up after, you know, Brock and Paul have left the ringside, and there's the, you know, the appreciation from the crowd. This is second on. It's definitely, I mean, Meltzer's give this 4.5 star. I would have said up until the final third, I would have said 4 star, but I think it's bang on the money. I'd even go 4 3/4 star, because I think literally this is just an incredible encounter. I don't know how you feel, Chris.
Yeah, completely spot on. I wouldn't quite give it 5 star. I don't know what it is that's missing for it to be 5 star. I don't know. Like I said, it was my match of the year, but I think, yeah, 4 3/4 would be appropriate. Just to touch on Heyman, what I love about Heyman is, and to name drop again, when I spoke to Ricardo Rodriguez, he made a really good point that the reason he and Alberto worked so well is he knew not to overshadow Alberto, because obviously Ricardo, very much larger than life, all about that big entrance and his character and being outlandish, but he still never took away from Alberto. Alberto was the star, and that's what Heyman's done with everybody that he's been with. I know it didn't quite work out for Ryback and Cesaro and Curtis Axel, but for Punk and Bryan, you know, these are 2 guys who are larger than life, big stars, outlandish characters. But Heyman is that as well. Heyman's outlandish. He's a huge character, has been for 30, 40 years, however long it's been, but he's still, no matter how much involvement he has in a match, he never takes away from the guys in the match, because like you said, his timing's perfect. He knows when to do, what to do, when to do it. You know he's there, but he never distracts from what's going on. But he's always in the back of your mind thinking, Heyman, what's Heyman going to be up to? What's he going to do? When's he going to get involved? And that's the sign of a perfect manager, or valet, or whatever you want to call him.
I have to agree with you 100%. Let's not forget the talent he's with right now. Roman Reigns doing arguably the best work of his career. I don't think many could argue that at this particular point, on a completely different other level. Well, I'll tell you what then, that has been an absolute joy to discuss that match there. Honestly, I've thoroughly enjoyed that. And of course, we go on then to the next part of the show. And of course, well, we go straight into match 6 on the show, which is the mixed tag team match of Dolph Ziggler and Kaitlyn versus AJ Lee and Big E Langston. Now, of course, not too much detail of the back backstory. This was not given on SummerSlam, so I'm only going off memory really here a little bit, because Dolph Ziggler was actually having Big E as his heavy at one point, and AJ, they were sort of on that TV relationship going on. Of course, they were all together sort of like a trio when Dolph Ziggler actually cashed in and won his World Heavyweight Championship the night after WrestleMania that year. But of course, later on, Dolph Ziggler becomes babyface, has that double turn with Alberto Del Rio. They've obviously broken up at this point for being on different sides. Kaitlyn, I remember, had a secret admirer at one point. I don't know if this is before or after SummerSlam, but I remember Big E was the one that was meant to be the secret crush. But of course, that didn't kind of work out. As you can see here, what we've got, the mixed tag team action going on here. But that's a random Monday Night Raw segment from back in 2013, which probably, I'm sure many have probably hoped to forget. But anyway, going into the match itself here, not too much on the detail, but I do love the visuals from AJ Lee. She's fantastic on her character work, the way she goes through. But as we go towards the end of the match here, it's left with the men in the ring. The women have already fought to the floor after AJ hit a Shining Wizard to Kaitlyn. We see Dolph Ziggler. He looks like he's going to run to the ropes, but AJ actually grabs the leg. Ziggler looks back distracted as AJ turns around. She's actually speared over on the outside of the ring. Big E then actually hits, or goes to hit the big ending on Dolph Ziggler. Dolph counters, hits the zigzag, and gets the 1, 2, 3. Short and sweet as you like. Only 6 minutes and 44 seconds. Did this match feel a bit rushed for you?
I think its placement was clever. I think it's similar to the women's match from earlier on in the night, Natalya versus Brie. I think because we had WWE are very clever with their timings and their placements of matches that they know people aren't going to be too bothered about. What always jumps out for me is Kofi Mania. Kofi Mania was an incredible moment, but it took away from Becky Lynch's huge moment at the end of the night.
Yeah.
It's because there was such a high of Kofi, and then there wasn't really anything to bring it back down. Do you know what I mean? I think you have to balance. You have to have the high moments and then bring it back down so that people don't get exhausted in time for the main event, for the end of the show. So this was good placement. Even with me rewatching it last week and rewatching it today, I don't remember too much about the match, which I think says a lot about it. I struggle to get invested in mixed tag matches. I think you know what you're going to get with mixed tag matches. Obviously, this was at a period before the men and the women would really have that intergender sort of clash, which we've seen a bit more in the last year or so, especially with Becky Lynch in the last few years, getting in, like having a match against Corbin, and James Ellsworth had matches against women as well, didn't he? I think it was Asuka that he had a match against. So yeah, I feel bad, but I've not got particularly too much to say about this one. I don't think it felt short to me anyway, because I wasn't bothered. I think this is, to use that horrible old phrase, this was a bit of a piss break match for me. Just wasn't invested in it. I love all four people involved. Don't get me wrong. Like, I was a big fan of Dolph. Loved his cash in. I thought that was one of the greatest moments in Raw history. Huge fan of AJ Lee, one of the best women's wrestlers ever. I think Kaitlyn should have had a much bigger push than she got. I think she was really underutilized. Obviously, Big E has gone on to huge things, and potentially even huger things this weekend. But this match did very, very little for me. I'm afraid I would struggle to give it 1 star. Just purely off my own opinion. Some people might have loved it and given it 3 stars, but it just wasn't for me.
No, well, I can tell you that Dave gave this 2.5 stars as his rating, and you said piss break. In the PG term, I believe that's called as filler. But yeah, I mean, it's like you say, it's this one. It's not going to live long in the memory, and like you say, the placements are very key. Like you said, I love what you said with Kofi Mania, because as well, that was actually placed so well in WrestleMania 35. It was a place where you knew it was going to maximize the height. Like you said, the placement of matches is clever. It's in between 2 long matches as well, so perhaps it should have kept that short length. Maybe it's completely right that it did so, and I agree with you. This didn't really do a lot for me, this match, although I'm a big fan of a lot of the performers in there. I would give it 1.5 star. There wasn't enough really to keep me totally engaged. Maybe I'm a bit burnt out from what's been before and keeping energy for what's to come. Maybe that's the situation.
Yeah, completely agree. I think, because we knew what was coming afterwards. Well, we didn't know what was coming, but we knew what match was coming, and it was the main event, 2 of the biggest stars in the world. I think it just people were waiting for it to be over to get to the next thing. next segment.
Absolutely, indeed. And well, we did get one small segment before. We mentioned it earlier in the video. Fandango interrupts one too many times for The Miz. The Miz completely clocks him backstage, and we see a little bit of action from The Miz as well there. So, yeah, that's your Fandangoing done for this video. And we get then the video package ready for what would be the mega main event of the evening. Or is it? It's the WWE Championship. We've got John Cena, the champion, defending against Daniel Bryan. And yeah, the video package, if you don't mind me diving into it once again, I think is another beauty from WWE. Cena can choose any opponent if he's choosing for SummerSlam. He picks Daniel Bryan. And Vince says, well, there's a reason he's picked Daniel Bryan, because he's not on John Cena's level. He lacks ruthless aggression. And as much as he wants to see John Cena as champion, he wants to see as much Daniel Bryan to not be champion. But Triple H says that Daniel Bryan, he could be the future, but Bryan just doesn't want to follow the corporate. We see him dressed up in the suit, but he doesn't agree to shave the beard. In fact, he actually shaves a bit of Wade Barrett's. Got some bad news, Wade. But Brad Maddox is a referee then for Bryan's match with Wade Barrett, and of course he actually cost Bryan that match, so Barrett gets the victory. He then asks Vince McMahon if he can ref the match at SummerSlam, and Triple H says, well, someone should ref that match at SummerSlam, someone with guts to do what is right. And I think you're referring to me, which means he actually pedigrees Brad Maddox. So, yeah, probably his second most memorable thing to be known for. But we won't go into number one. It's clean, this show. But Daniel Bryan says that WWE doesn't want this. This is not what they're after. They want the style and substance that in here, not the someone that's in here for the fame, not someone that's like the pure wrestler over Daniel Bryan. Cena says, though, he's not a parody. He's won all of his big matches and these moments, and he's done them as champion. And I thought as a video package, once again, WWE have got this spot on it. It's all about your typical sports entertainment. You know, the John Cena, he's got the look, he's got the act, he's got everything that screams you are the guy. I believe once we did Money in the Bank 2011, he is the New England Patriots. He is that former, the franchise player. And we've got Daniel Bryan, who's the indie darling, the underdog story, the person that shouldn't be in this position, but fans just can't help but love. It's such a perfect video package, isn't it?
Yeah, again, they knocked it out of the park. I don't think Daniel Bryan was ever part. Well, yeah, pretty obvious because they never do a bad video package, but all of Daniel Bryan's video packages were just next level because he was relatable, because he just comes across as a normal guy. You're rooting for him, even during the no period, yes period, whatever it was that they did with Bryan. He was another guy that was just so over. People either loved him or they hated him. They really loved him or they really hated him. Yeah. I'd love to do an episode one day on WWE's greatest video packages, but it would be literally impossible to whittle them down to a top 10 because they're just all absolutely stellar. Because what's so great about them is as well, I went through a period, like I think a lot of wrestling fans did. I think I went about 3, 4, maybe 5 years without watching WWE. Life just got in the way, you know. Started to have kids and all that kind of stuff, and work got busier and blah, blah, blah. Just fell out of love with wrestling. And then when I got back into it, I didn't feel like I'd missed a second because the video packages are that good. They get you caught up. You could go a couple of months without watching, and everything you need to know is in there. Even for the mid-card matches, they still, you know, the matches that don't feel like they're important, the video packages still make them feel important, and that's what's great about them.
Absolutely. No, I have to agree with that. And the thing is, it's for like you say, a story, when WWE wants to tell it, they can have their own personal individual spin on it. And they do such a good job of making that as well. And this match was no different either. And it plays so perfectly when both superstars come down that ringside, because Daniel Bryan, everyone's going full on yes movement. Yes. Cena, it's boo Cena once again. It's not quite if Cena wins we riot, but you get in the vibes, it's there, and it's not early into the match. You can see how the crowd is going to play a big part of this match. And I think it adds to the pure story of what these two try to do in that great wrestling match. We see very early doors where, you know, we see that Steel steps out and John Cena runs up to there and hits a suplex on Daniel Bryan. We get the pure boos from the crowd. You know, we get again boos when he wants to do the 5-knuckle shuffle, and the second he goes to do that business, he gets the kick from Bryan with a big cheers backwards. We get the "you can't wrestle" to John Cena. There's just pure emotion from these fans, isn't there? And it really adds to that sort of anticipation.
Yeah. Where did you say? I forget. Was it New York? Did you say?
This is in the Staples Center in Los Angeles. This one in California.
In LA. In LA, yeah. It's the crowd, as we always say, is 90% of the show. It's the crowd is the most important part of the show for me. It doesn't matter what's on the card. There could be loads of duds, as far as I'm concerned. Loads of just it could be a show of mid carders, but if the crowd gets invested, you enjoy that show. Look at the Raw after WrestleMania every year. It's about the fans, isn't it? It doesn't matter what happens. The fans are there having a good time. You know you're going to have a good time, and when you've got that back and forth, like you say, the "Let's go Cena," Cena sucks, or the yes chants, they mold so well together. I think this was a perfect pairing, a perfect rivalry. Two guys, like you said, who are the complete polar opposite of each other. That's when wrestling's at its best, like the David Goliath, or the ultimate heel, the ultimate face, Rock and Austin, Vince and Steve Austin. Those kind of rivalries, the polar opposites of each other. They're magic, absolute magic.
They surely are, and I absolutely have to agree with that. And I mean, so this is probably one of John Cena's best in-ring wrestling encounters as well, because I love the fact that you get the "you can't wrestle" chance, but this gives Cena a chance to prove, well, hang on, I can give Daniel Bryan as good a match in that sort of moment as possible. And I mean, there's some great moments here. I mean, Daniel Bryan, he's a wrestling machine as well in 2013. It's just amazing to see his comebacks, his refusal to lose, and how he gets that energy from the crowd. I love those moments where he wants to hit the STFU on Cena, wants to beat Cena in his own hold. We see the German suplex, putting the yes lock on. But Cena, you know what Cena's like. He finds his way out of all these moments. He's super Cena after all. But we looked at Daniel Bryan running into an AA as well. I thought it was a fun little spot there, which of course gets a near fall, because of course many times many superstars don't kick out of that attitude adjustment. So good to see that Daniel Bryan still exists in the match. We do get one little nasty spot though. I'm sure you remember this as well, Chris, there where Cena has hold of Daniel Bryan on the second rope. Almost like he looks like he's going to do into like a Styles Clash or something, but he brings him down to the ring. You see his head hit the canvas as he then transitions into the SDFU. That looked quite painful, didn't it?
Yeah, nasty. Anything with anybody landing on their head just makes me like, oh. We've seen it end so many careers. It just, nasty. But I don't know if it's hard to tell whose fault it was, really. Thinking back to it, I think it's just one of those. These things can happen, can't they? They know these things can happen when they get in the ring. Luckily, everyone involved was okay, and it was definitely a little bit of a uncomfortable moment.
Yeah, uncomfortable, definitely. But thankfully, like I say, it doesn't affect any other way of the match. Daniel Bryan carries on as normal. As we get to the finish, Daniel Bryan wins clean. He does that running knee, and you think to yourself, well, Triple H as well, special referee, just counts 1, 2, 3. Triple H is a non-factor in this match as well, which you turn around and say, well, hang on, Triple H is the special guest referee. Something's going to go down. No, we just see Daniel Bryan hit that knee. 1, 2, 3. We've got a brand new WWE champion. Of course, a lot is made of this as well. John Cena gets up after the match. You see a little bit of a stare down with Daniel Bryan for a short time, but then there's that symbol of respect there. Cena's pointing, saying, this is all you now. You can go and sort this out. This is your crowd, your moment. You take it, you show you are the man. Cena leaves the ring, and we saw the confetti coming out there. Fantastic. Triple H raising the arm, and just as we think we're going to go off air, well, we knew, because we see this 5 minutes left on the network version, and we've seen this before, Chris, you and me. But I tell you what, there was a special moment where we hear Randy Orton's music. That's right. Randy Orton comes out and teases cashing in Money in the Bank. Now, of course, Randy Orton does walk to ringside, holds the briefcase up high, and then he says to himself, right, okay, no, I'm not going to do it now. I'm just letting you know I'm here. Walks a bit further towards the back. Daniel Bryan. Fancy it. It's SummerSlam. I've not been on the card, but LA don't deserve it. I'm going to go and do it somewhere else. I'll cash in Corpus Christi. Why not? And it gets to a point where you see Triple H walking behind Daniel Bryan, who's doing all those yeses, championship in the air. Triple H pulls him round, hits the pedigree. Randy Orton comes on in, and then we see the briefcase cashed in. The bell rings, and just 1, 2, 3, and we've got a brand new champion in Randy Orton. You can see the shock as well from the Staples Center. Like you say, crowds make moments, can make shows, whatever. They really ate this up, and of course, they really knew we got what we wanted. Daniel Bryan finally WWE champion, and then boom, it's taken away from him in a matter of moments. And Randy Orton, someone that's been there before, I believe they said it was his 7th WWE Championship that he'd won on this particular show here and there. And of course, it's the beginning of what would be the Authority. So, I mean, let's knuckle this down here, and I suppose we should go a little bit further back first before we go into to give the full finish of the pay-per-view. With your thoughts of Cena and Daniel Bryan, is there anything you'd like to add to this? And what was your star rating with the match?
If we're talking about just the match, if we're not thinking about what happened after with Randy Orton, I don't think it was quite on the same level as Punk versus Brock. Still very enjoyable, a great technical match, and that's one thing that's always stuck out for me about Cena. So many people say that he can't wrestle, right? But I think a lot of that comes from the fact that there have just been better wrestlers around at the same time as him. Like go back to when Cena debuted. Kurt Angle was arguably the best wrestler in the world at the time. We still had guys like, I don't know, was Benoit would have still been around at that time, wouldn't he?
Yeah, he would have been. Yeah.
So you had all these technical wizards who could out wrestle anybody in the world, but I don't think Cena, by any stretch of the imagination, is a bad wrestler. He's like Goldberg. Goldberg needs two moves. He doesn't need to learn any more moves. It's been successful for him. If Cena's only got 5 moves of doom and they have got him 16 World Championship wins, why does he need to learn more than 5 moves? Work smarter, not harder, as we all say. It's the same for Brock. Brock doesn't need to work 100 nights a year. If he can work 5 and earn 10 times what anybody else is earning, So that's my thoughts on Cena. The match itself, a great technical match. I think, like you said, people chanting that he can't wrestle gave him the opportunity to show that he can wrestle. I think this might have been around the time where people started to sort of change their mind, change their opinion on Cena. As he started to appear less and less and less and got into movies, people started to miss him more and more and more. I didn't think that the pop that he got at Money in the Bank just last month, I didn't think we'd ever hear a pop like that for Cena ever again after 2013.
Yeah.
But people missed him. People love him. People love the fact that he's just a good guy as well. He's just a nice stand-up guy. You can't help but like him. The match itself, a really good match, a really good, enjoyable, a really solid main event. I think the masterstroke of all of this for me was Triple H, because obviously Triple H, you think back over his whole career, untrustworthy, devious, happy to bend the rules, one of the greatest heels that there's ever been, Evolution, one of the greatest heel factions of all time. You never know what Triple H is going to do. The whole build up to this match, obviously, he was very much in Bryan's corner, which didn't seem right, but there was nothing to suggest that he was going to turn on Bryan. There was nothing to suggest that this was all a lie, all a ruse. And it wasn't until he spun Bryan around and kicked him and put him in the pedigree. It wasn't until that moment that I thought that anything could happen. That was a genuine shock, but a genuine shock that we don't get many of anymore. I would probably 4 stars. I think I'd give the match. Very, very enjoyable.
I think you made some fantastic points there, and looking at the star rating there for 4 stars, I think is a fair one. Mr. Dave Meltzer gives it 4.5 stars. Chris, I'm going to smack bang in the middle, my friend. I think 4.25, I think it's fair. Like you say, it's just shy of match of the night here. I think these two did fantastic away. It's done here. And like you say, John Cena, I mean, the heart has grown so much fonder without him being around, and the pops he's been getting here. I'm buzzing to see what he does this Sunday and hope that he can actually put on a heck of a match. If it's half as good as this with Roman on Sunday, I think we're going to be very, very happy. I think it's an absolutely outstanding encounter that they could have, and that what these two did have here. And to give your thoughts then on the cliffhanger of the show then, I mean, of course, this is something that I don't think anyone saw coming. You mentioned the idea of Triple H as well there, and I like that because Triple H kind of NXT as well with those, he was part of NXT. We didn't really have NXT as that thing going on there, but Daniel Bryan started there also. Yeah. To still actually have that cash-in moment there, that turn. We got on the Triple H we knew, and we were waiting for it, and it happened. And, I mean, obviously, the authority would go on then at that point till, what was it, I believe, Survivor Series 2014 that they had to split up at that point, I believe, was the Survivor Series match, and when Sting debuted, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, when it went down to just Dolph Ziggler on his own.
He did, yeah. I believe he was against Seth Rollins in the final. And I mean, like, you know, it was a start of something that was major that happened in professional wrestling at that time. And do you have like a good memories from the Authority as just as a closing thing, as before we go into the final ground of the show?
Yeah, I love a good heel faction. I think they're important. We don't have enough good heel factions at the moment. There's loads of factions in AEW, but really in WWE, I think since the Hurt Business was split up, we've basically just got the Bloodline. Unless I'm forgetting any, but there's nothing that springs to mind. Yeah, I'm a big fan of authority figures. People don't like them anymore. People say, "Oh, we don't need GMs. We don't need this, that, and the other." But I loved Constable Corbin. I liked Kurt Angle as GM. I thought Page was great. Daniel Bryan was great. I think it's important to have somebody there calling the shots and making the matches, or else it's just a free for all. It's like, how are these matches being made? We need somebody on screen, maybe not getting as involved as the Authority did, but without that whole storyline, without that turn from Triple H at the end, without the Authority storyline, we would never have got the full Yes Movement. We would have never got the Yes Movement crowd all flooding the ring with Bryan and the Yes T-shirts. We would have never got the Miracle on Bourbon Street. I think it's one of the most. I don't know if important is the word, but it's one of the most iconic storylines. It was incredible stuff from start to finish. Bryan fit that mold better than I think any underdog has ever fit that mold. To go against not just like one boss. It's not like Austin going against Vince. It's not like Ray going against a couple of better, bigger wrestlers. He went across. He went against the entire management structure, against the entire company. It was when we first got that beautiful phrase of "you're a B+ player," which has obviously been used since with Kofi Mania, and those two storylines felt incredibly similar. But it was the start of just something epic and magical. And Yeselmania, the Miracle on Bourbon Street, is one of my fondest memories of wrestling. Always will be. It was just beautiful stuff.
Yeah. It really was. And I don't know if it was the long-term direction completely for WrestleMania, but the fact that it did and the way it played out, like you say, was absolute perfection. Like you say, the way this fell out, because Daniel Bryan had the chance, obviously, the Night of Champions, and I think he won the match, and they found a way to get the belt off of him straight away afterwards. Then we had the crossover at Hell in a Cell where Shawn Michaels did the super kick. Of course, he's on Team Triple H. Always he doesn't go against, even though he trained Daniel Bryan. That storyline really played so well as they played that through. And then, like you said, we got the Miracle on Bourbon Street, the B+ player stuff was absolutely phenomenal. And like you said, this was the starting point of when it happened. It is a significant moment in wrestling history, which is what makes this show probably the reason why people voted, because they remember this. It was important, and it is probably the birthplace of what became of Daniel Bryan.
Well, one thing, funnily enough, I read today while I was looking into this, just to like make sure I got my dates right and my pay-per-views right. I can't remember who Bryan said it to, but around that time, I think just after, he revealed that the plan up until fairly recently before that was for him to go into WrestleMania 30 in a program against Sheamus. There was never any plan for this to happen. This was just organic. It happened because of the fans. I think that's basically what happened with Kofi Mania. If Kofi hadn't have got that great reaction at the Elimination Chamber, would we have got Kofi Mania? Probably not. But yeah, the fans. Thank you to wrestling fans everywhere, because it's thanks to us that we got this moment. It was never on the cards. I think it was a short-term thing. I think Bryan lost the title that night. He probably chased it for a few more months, and then that would have been it. I think that would have just been, he'd have been back to the mid-card, back to the IC title scene or something like that.
Absolutely. I mean, like you say there, I mean, Daniel Bryan, if you go back to 2014, at the start of the year, the program of the Royal Rumble with Bray Wyatt, he was part of the Wyatt family for a short time before leaving them. And of course, he wasn't involved in the Royal Rumble match. Infamously, that would be CM Punk's last time before he walked out of the company. And then it threw the plans into disarray. And like you say, it was the fans then. We got that protest in the ring, the Yes movement, where it took over Raw, and everything sort of just manifested into this storyline that wasn't meant to be, and it was so perfect. So no, it's fantastic points you make there, Chris. There, and to give the grade then overall of this pay-per-view, SummerSlam 2013, out of a 5-star, what would you give this pay-per-view?
That's a tough one. Well, it contained my match of the year. It contained a couple of dark horses that I really enjoyed, like the Christian Del Rio match. Didn't expect much of that at all. Really enjoyed that. There was a couple of duds. I think The Miz was a really good host overall on the few interactions we saw of him. I don't think it's by any stretch a modern classic. I don't think it's one of the best, even the best SummerSlams. It was a very solid pay-per-view. 4 stars. I think 4 stars is probably about right.
I think that's a very fair rating there for you. I'm going to go for a 3.75 as my rating there because I think there's some significant moments in history, stuff that can't be ignored. Obviously, we've said there are some great matches with CM Punk, Brock Lesnar, which I agree also with you. If it was match of the night, probably even match of the year. John Cena, Daniel Bryan, also a phenomenal match there. I enjoyed Del Rio and Christian. And I even enjoyed the kickoff match. I thought that was good fun as well, even if you're not really classed that as the main show. We are here because we've reviewed it as well. So I think all in all, there was a lot of things to take away from this and to enjoy there. So that's pretty much it. So Chris, I want to say thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been great to have you on, to be a part of SCW Rewind, to do a retro review of you. And we've been wanting to do a collab so long, and well, we've finally done it. It's there.
Yeah, man. We'll have to do it the other way around now as well. I'll have to get you to come on. I love doing lists. I love doing retro reviews. I love just having guests on is brilliant. And I think I said this at the start of the show. Like, it's great talking to a wrestler, but there's nothing better than just talking about wrestling with your mates. Just talking about what you love, what you hate, what's been going on. Just that conversation, that interaction, that, it's there's nothing better than that. But no, thank you, mate. Thank you. Honestly, you can thank me for coming on, but thank you for having me. I big fan, big long time fan of the show. So really glad we managed to do it, and I'd love to do it again.
Oh, you'd definitely always be welcome on. And if you ever want me on your show, like I say, just hit me up and we'd be more than happy to. It would be a privilege to come on It's My House Pod. It would be certainly a lot of fun. And like I say, for everyone that is watching, I've left the link in the description. You can go there, click on that link and subscribe to It's My House Podcast. And I mean, it's not yours, it's My House Podcast. That's what Chris will probably say on future shows, I imagine. But it's definitely some fantastic interviews. You've got your SummerSlam predictions there, like you say, chatting with some of your friends as well, with NXT TakeOver as well. So there's lots of things to dive into. We mentioned the interviews with Vince Russo, with Eric Bischoff. There's lots to dig your teeth into. You honestly won't get bored, and some great interviews I'm sure you've got lined up on the way as well. So thank you very much, Chris, for coming on. And before we do go, we did have a couple of comments that we just want to throw on the screen. C Nation Dog saying that this was a great show. Thank you very much, C Nation Dog. Glad you enjoyed it. And also Jonesy Jack Wrestling says, great stream, lads. Thank you very much, Jonesy. But that's all from us anyway. Take care. Thank you for watching. It's been SCW Rewind. A new poll will go up, and then there'll be another retro review next month. And it's your say, so get voting. And don't forget to check out on the channel tomorrow. It'll be NXT TakeOver 36 predictions. I'll be with Mex from WrestleMania UK. And as well as that, my SummerSlam predictions are available on the channel for you now as well, where I'm with Silky from Jonesy Chats Wrestling. So make sure to go and check those out on the channel right now. But that's all from me. Thank you for watching. Take care. All the best. And we'll see you next time here on SCW. All the best.